everybody. Welcome to another installment of Biology in the Basement with your host, Mr. Andraco. Oh, thank you. And, of course, give it up for Bonesy. He's looking pretty good these days, right? I know, we had to disrobe. I got to get you guys ready. Tomorrow, we're going to get up close and personal with Bonesy. So I asked him if he would do this, if he would bear it all for educational purposes, and he said yes. So just to prepare you, Bonesy is ready for action tomorrow. But I've got my Dwight Schrute Gym for Muscles shirt on. We're going to be talking about muscles and the muscular system. If you couldn't tell by my old workout photos from when I used to compete, I used to be pretty big, but those were the old days. Anyways, we're gonna have a short video talking about muscles, and then we will give you your homework, and that'll be it, and you'll be on your way. And tomorrow we'll talk about bone and then skin. They kind of all are connected. They all work together, and then we'll, of course, revisit the immune system briefly when we get to skin, but I'm sure you've heard enough of that already, so we'll stop with any more of that. So, yeah, let's have a fact of the day so that we could get started. This one's interesting. We've all learned, or we all know, that the male platypus has venomous barbs, right, in the back of its legs. Well, it turns out that venom contains a hormone that promotes insulin release called GLP-1. It is found in humans but degrades quickly. Platypuses make long-lasting form of it, paving the way to new diabetes treatment. So the platypus GLP-1 also can be made in the lab, so no platypuses are needed to provide it. Right? That's always the goal, is to not have to harm any animals when we are treating them. But it is also a great example of why we want to maintain biodiversity, right? If we had let the cats keep going crazy over Australia and New Zealand, the platypus may have gone extinct and this treatment would have been gone. So that's one of the big points of the relationships and biodiversity lab, is to maintain biodiversity, because just like we've discovered, there could be a hormone out there we haven't found that cures cancer, or in this case helps diabetics. So there's your fact of the day. Let's start talking about muscles. Very, very simple, straightforward body system. All it does is move, right? That's its responsibility. But normally, when we think of muscles, we think of these guys, the big muscles that we use for moving our bodies around. But we also have to think about the muscles that move things around inside of us, right? There's a lot of small moving jobs that the body needs to do, as well as big moving jobs. So let's look at that. Here we have the three main types, right? You've got skeletal muscle, which is what you normally think of, right? The bone, right? Skeletal, where we have muscle connected to bone, acting as pulleys and levers that are giving us the ability to move. We've got smooth muscle. This is something that we've kind of touched on when we talked about peristalsis, right? In your esophagus, in the rest of your digestive tract, even in your veins, pushing blood back to. Those are examples of smooth muscle. Your diaphragm, which we talked about, is a smooth muscle. Even your irises are smooth muscles. They open and close the aperture of your eye, right? And then another one that we have to classify differently, because it kind of has its own characteristics, and you may have never even thought of it as a muscle, but your heart, or cardiac muscle, cardiac tissue, is found in the heart, and it's kind of its own thing, so we give it its own category. Right? Skeletal muscles, what you need to know about them is that they are reinforced. Right? Your skeletal muscles can be doing nothing, and then all of a sudden you're going to ask them to lift a whole bunch of weight, right? And so for a fiber to go from nothing to 60 very, very quickly, it needs to be reinforced, or what are called striations. So these are the first type of muscle tissue that we look at is skeletal muscle, where it has many striations in it, which is just reinforcements for the muscle. This is usually voluntary movement, right? Where we tell, leg, move us forward, right? But sometimes, as we'll talk about in the nervous system, we have, watch out, reflexes that are, can be considered involuntary. But we can split hairs on that one later. This is the one that I really want to make sure I hit home with you guys, and that is smooth muscle. Smooth muscle is a muscle you may have never thought about, but it does all the odd jobs inside your body, whether it's moving food around, moving blood around, taking air into the body, changing the aperture of your eye. What are some other examples that I'm not thinking of? Those are the big ones anyways. These are involuntary muscles, as we'll talk about. I'm trying to lead into the brain and the nervous system, which is right around the corner, where in the lower part of our brain, which deals with the involuntary functions, controls these muscles because they're just doing them without you thinking about them. Also, they are not striated. They are not all of a sudden forced to go from 0 to 60 like your skeletal muscles are. They're just slowly pulsing, right? Food along, slowly pulsing your blood, or just kind of doing this. I always joke about, it's not like when you eat food, you're like, ar, 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 and then you're like, and then you're like, mash, 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 come on, stomach, right? Like go crazy on your food. It's just a slow process. It's involuntary. We don't stress those muscles, so they don't need to be striated. So that shows the structure there. All right, then we have the cardiac muscle, which, like I said, gets its own category because it lives in both camps, where you have an involuntary muscle, right? Luckily, we don't have to think about our heart beating, but it is striated. Any of you who are young drivers who have maybe been driving and you see a cop, right? Your heart goes from 0 to 60 there. So it's good to have striations, right? Our bodies in external stimuli or just the exercise we put our body through, our heart muscle needs to be reinforced because you really can't pull a cardiac muscle or you'd be out of luck. So that's why we've got those three types, and that's what your homework will focus on as well. So I tried to get fancier this year and put in some better animation, so I encourage you to look at this much closer. I know you can't see this very well, but the animations that I've added this year kind of do a better job than what I had before of just crappy pictures. So take a look at those on the actual slideshow that is shared to you through Google Classroom, and you can see how this works. Basically, you've got these thick and thin filaments, and the thin ones just slide over the thick ones. It's really cool. Your muscle fibers have these like little hooks on them, and the hooks are attached to receptors to take, of course, energy in the form of ATP, right? So an ATP molecule hits this, as well as a nervous signal, a neurotransmitter, which we'll talk about, and boom, a million of these little hooks just go like that in a coordinated motion, and you get a muscle movement. It's amazing that all of this is happening in fractions of a second. So I encourage you to check that out. Another big thing to understand about your muscles is when I talk about it in Anatomy and Phys, I talk about how muscles can pull and never push. So they're always in opposing groups, right? A muscle can contract, but it cannot like detract, right? It can only contract and relax. It needs an opposing muscle group to pull it back, right? So when you look at, say, your leg, for example, right, you have your quadricep, which will contract, right, shortening the muscles, which will pull your leg out and extend it. And then, of course, when I want to bring my leg back in, this doesn't just push my leg down. No, there is an opposing muscle group that's now contracting, right, and pulling my leg back. Same thing. You know, you have triceps and biceps, you have chest and back muscles. They work in opposing groups. And that's how muscles work, because they can pull, never push. And then we will talk about Old Bonesy tomorrow. So that is it. Since I knew I was going to forget off the top of my head, I've got my book here. Your homework is all of the muscular system, which is H178 through H180. It goes a little out of order, so skip over the skeletal system for right now. We'll hit that tomorrow. But yes, so that's where you want to be, 178 through 180. And so that's all for today. I hope that you are being well and enjoyed some nice weather over the one day of sunshine we had this weekend. I sure did. I feel like I practically got a suntan. I miss you guys. I hope all is well. And yeah, be good. See ya.